Hello YouTubers and welcome to Novus Talks with me, your host Novus Gorvius. And I decided to do another movie review for this video. It's been a few months since I last did a movie review, and the movie I'm going to review in this video, as you can tell, is a bit different from usual. I'm going to be reviewing a movie that came out in 2013. Why? Well, since last year I reviewed Golden Sun Dark Dawn after I played it for the first time, and that was like 10 years after the game actually came out. I figured I could get away with doing a review for this movie because I only saw it 2 days ago. And that movie is Bayonetta Bloody Fate. It was an anime adaptation made back in 2013, and I'd heard about it before, and I was meaning to watch it, but I kind of forgot about it, to be honest. And I was scrolling through the community, and I think I came across a screenshot of it, and I just decided to watch it there like 2 in the morning, and I was very impressed by it. So I figured, I have nothing else to do for a video, might as well go ahead with it. So that's what we're going to do. Bayonetta Bloody Fate. So as I said, it's a 2013 movie. It's done in anime style. It was made by a Japanese company, I believe. I couldn't tell you who they are for the life of me. I'm sorry, but for someone who never really watches anime or anything with this kind of art style, it was an experience for me, to say the least, because the closest thing I'd ever come to anime, I think, was Yu-Gi-Oh! GX when I was really, really young, and some of the old 2000s Transformers cartoons. But other than that, I don't have an experience with anime, to say the least. So I went into this with an open mind, simply because, well, it's an adaptation of Bayonetta. It's bound to be good, right? Based on the games. And yes, yes it was. So, Bloody Fate came out a year before the second game. And so meaning, since the second game didn't exist, the plot of the movie is taken entirely from the first game. All the information you're given in Bloody Fate is taken from the original Bayonetta. And with that said, it's pretty much an exact interpretation. It's really weird watching it, because with video game movies, normally you watch them and there's a lot of things changed. Most things don't line up with movies, but with this, it was like an exact copy and paste. There was differences, of course, but for the most part, it was incredibly true to the game. It was astonishingly true to the game. All the main characters were there with their voice actors from the games, which was very nice to hear. And the plot, as I said, follows the first game pretty much exactly to a T. It doesn't deviate, it doesn't try to add its own things. The only thing it did try to add is trying to give Baldur a motive for what he's doing. Anyone who's played Bayonetta or watched this movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, spoilers by the way, because I will be talking about spoilers. It does try to give motive to Baldur and what he's doing by explaining he was just driven mad by power or something. Obviously, since the second game came out a year later, we know that it wasn't exactly true, and that he did what he did in the first game because he was possessed by, I'm going to say Aesir or Lopter, whatever you want to call him, the Prophet. He was possessed by him, so that's why he was evil in the first game. But, that's a extremely nitpicky thing to bring up, but I just wanted to mention it anyway. The animation style is very anime-esque. It moves very nicely as well at certain points, especially with the angels. The angels move exactly like in the cutscenes in the game. And actually, now that I think about it, the animation style, the movements of the characters, especially of Bayonetta herself, does kind of reflect those clock-type cutscenes you get in the games. So I wonder if that was intentional or just because the animation style they're working with. But the movie does make some slight changes from the game just to make it more unique and an action movie out of it, so that you're not watching a movie version of the game. There are different scenes, alternative scenes. Most noticeably the opening sequence, which I absolutely loved. Obviously in the game, the opening sequence, you were in a graveyard and Bayonetta was dressed as a nun. She was reading for some dead person or whatever, and then angels come down, she fights them, and it's a bloodbath. But the movie actually gave an explanation to that. You know, it never really understood in the game why she was at this graveyard, but in the movie, this coffin belonged to one of the cult members of Baldur's cult that are designed to resurrect Jubileus. These priests that you see killing themselves in cutscenes in the games, apparently that's what that was about. I don't know if that's true in the game, but either way, it's a nice detail to add to have it make more sense and not just a throw-in thing. But there's a difference, as I said. In the movie, the scene doesn't take place in the graveyard, it takes place inside a church. And Rodon comes out of the coffin. I believe he did that in the game. Yeah, he did that in the game as well. You know, Rodon comes out of the coffin. He gives Bayonetta her guns, which are not Scarborough Fair like they were in the game. They were Lonely Night, I think they were called. It was something nice, anyway. But the point is, she uses them and they break later on. She gets Scarborough Fair. It was used as a tool to sort of showcase her other weapons, because the night guns break and then she's forced to use her other iconic weapons from the game, such as a sword, a chainsaw. I'll get into all that later on. Back to the opening sequence anyway. So it's mirrored from the game, but it's done in the church instead, and it's really fun. Luca is it Luca? Yeah, he's there spying on her, trying to get evidence that she killed his father. We all know how that went down. I'm not really going to go too in depth into it, because I presume most of the people watching this will have seen the movie or will know about the story of the games at the very least. So that was a cool, interesting thing. And then Jean shows up at the end of the opening sequence. And it was really nice because it sort of introduced you to the main characters of the film. In that sequence, you had Bayonetta, you had Luca, and you had Rodon. And then Jean, on the outside, you can tell that they were trying to set her up as a villain. And I do want to add real quickly, it was really weird watching the movie and trying to forget the plot of the game. Because I wanted to enjoy this movie and watch it to see if the plot made sense on its own without the games. But it was very difficult to do since I played the games tons of times and the plot was pretty much identical, but I tried my best, and I think the movie does a good job at getting its points across. The only major weak point to the movie, I would say, is probably the third act. The whole Ithaval segment of the film, it differs a quite amount from the game. Obviously, when you fight Jean in the game, the vehicle gets blown up and you think Luca and Cereza are dead, and Bayonetta goes ape shit on Jean, and you think they're dead. But that isn't exactly how it happens in the movie. The movie does some things where, like, you know they're alive, but Bayonetta also knows they're alive, so the fight sequence doesn't have the same sort of anger behind it as it did in the game. Jean's motives are also different. In the game, Jean was mind controlled, I think, by Baldur. To be honest, it wasn't made very clear in the game, whereas the movie sort of stated that she was acting on her own will, but with the intention of waking Bayonetta up so that they could join forces to defeat Baldur. So the movie, ironically, does a better job at explaining some of the weaker plot points of the game, funny enough. Another thing is the whole Cereza being Bayonetta as a child from the past being brought into the future. The game did explain it toward the end. Well, it showed you it, but throughout the game, it's very difficult to put together. But the movie does a good job at saying, yeah, this is Cereza from the past brought into the future to awaken the left eye. However, I prefer the way the game did it, because when the game when Cereza gets returned to the past in the game, you see sort of space-time distorting, and you see Bayonetta basically have a heart attack, and then the eyes of the world awaken. It's not quite that way in the movie, but you know, again, these are all nitpicky things I have. Baldur trying to kill Luca as well. Like in the game, he mentions about how he can die like his father, and then he tries to kill him, and then he fails, and he tries to kill him again by throwing him out the window. He says that line after he tries to rip him apart in the movie, and it's a bit... It doesn't make a lot of sense, but as I said, I'm nitpicking here because overall this movie is fantastic, and there really is very little bad things to say about it. I just wanted to go through these little small details a bit as well. One thing I think is very worth bringing up though is, so as I said, some of the scenes were different. Like, instead of Bayonetta around the train to Vigor and getting off, she rides the train and she fights Jean on it, and then she fights one of the angels on top of the Jormungandr statue instead of Jean's. Differences like that. Which was a really cool sequence, by the way. I do want to bring up, my jaw dropped when Bayonetta pulled the chainsaw out of her hair, and I can't remember the angel's name off the top of my head. It's been a while since I played Bayonetta, but she just cuts him into like thirds with it, and it's one of the most badass things I've ever seen. It nails her character right down exactly to what she's like in the game. Quickly, I do want to bring up as well the final battle with Jean is a bit disjointed because it takes place in Paradiso as a way to sort of mirror when you fight Jean in Paradiso in a flashback in earlier on in the game. But it's disjointed in the movie because, you know, Rodin shows up and he gives Bayonetta Scarborough Fair, and so she's not fighting with her sword anymore and things like this. So there's a lot going on in that sequence that detracts from the tense moment. So the final Jean fight and the whole ending, I thought, was definitely the weakest part of the film. Especially the Jubileus fight. Now, from what I can tell in the movie, Jubileus is kind of just floating around in space, and then she wakes up, and it's cool because she nearly ends the world, similar to Aesir and Bayonetta 2. But then they do something really cool where Baldur is sort of controlling Jubileus while Jean and Bayonetta are controlling Sheba, and they two fight. But you don't get to see the fight. You see literally just two rays of light just banging off each other, going around the universe, smashing planets to pieces. And, you know, One of a Kind plays in the background, which is an awesome addition, but it's not the same. Like, I prefer to see them actually like punch and like hit each other instead of just being these rays of light. But, you know, I guess they didn't exactly know how to handle Jubileus. You can't exactly blame them because you bring in this being who can like end the universe like straight away. Like, what do? You kind of have to end it as soon as possible. I did like though that they use the horse trap thing that you kill the... I can't remember the names of the angels, please forgive me, it's been a while since I played the game, but those female angels with the big boobs and like the green whips in their hairs that you fight in the Ithavoll building. In the game, you throw them on that horse thing and you snap their spine with your leg. That exact thing happens with Jubileus in the movie, and it was kind of funny to see it incorporated that way. You know, obviously tweaking it a bit, but it was a fun thing nonetheless. But I do have my problems with the Jubileus sequence. It could have been done a lot better, I feel. Other than that, as I said, the movie is pretty much fantastic. There's only one scene, now that I think about it, there's only one scene in the movie, I mean, other than I guess the opening sequence, which is altered, there's only one scene that in the movie that's not in the game, and that's the shower / bath scene, where Luca puts the walkie-talkie, whatever he did, in the room, and then she comes out and she's obviously naked, and then he's caught off guard and she's mocking him, and it's a really heartfelt character moment because, you know, it shows you the ridiculousness of Bayonetta overall, and even Luca, because you know he thinks this woman killed his father, but he's sexually entranced by her at the same time. So it's just really stupid and funny to see, and I think that is one of my favorite scenes in the movie for that reason. Right now, actually, I do remember what I was going to say earlier, and I apologize for that. I was going to bring up the destruction of the sages and the witches and Vigrid. The game barely touches on it. Sorry, the movie. You see flashbacks of the town burning and Baldur floating in the air looking all evil and stuff, and Rose dying and Bayonetta's there with her, but you don't really get a reason why. Like, how did it go extinct? It just says that the witches and the sages made each other extinct. Okay, but how did Baldur survive? How did Rojan and Cereza survive? Obviously, you know, Bayonetta 2 showed us the whole war with the angels in the past, but if I'm mistaken, didn't Bayonetta 1 also vaguely explain what happened? You did go to Vigrid in the past, and you got to see some of what was going on there, I'm pretty sure, with, you learned that the angels wiped out the witches in the past, that Baldur got them to massacre the witches in a witch hunt, and that he rallied the general public to hunt down witches as well. The movie did not explain that at all. In fact, it basically skipped over it. So it is kind of a bigger flaw with the movie, we'll say. It's not a massive flaw, but it's a big enough flaw that doesn't fit well. But you can kind of glance over because of the narration sequence in the beginning. One last point, the soundtrack in the movie, phenomenal as always. It's a Bayonetta soundtrack. They added only 2 songs in the games, a remix of Afterburner and then a remix of One of a Kind. They were fine. I would have liked if there was more game soundtracks, OSTs rather, in the movie, but obviously you can't get it 100% like the game. I get that they had to do some things differently, so I can forgive them on that. I also really wish Bayonetta fought Baldur. There was no... She takes out the gun and then the whole tower rises and then Jubileus wakes up, but there's no fight like in the game, which I wish kind of happened, because father and daughter, and they build up this tense relationship, but you never get to see them fight until Sheba blasts Baldur into oblivion. But yeah, the fact that that's the only flaw, these few scenes that I can pick out in the third segment of the film are the only things I can pick out, says a lot about the quality of the film overall. It is an incredibly true to form adaptation of a game. It's probably the most accurate I've ever seen in my life, and you know, they didn't try to change the story in any wild way. They added little tiny things to it, but they're negligible, and you know, I have a lot of respect for them for that, because clearly the people who made this movie had a lot of respect for the game, and they wanted to make something that the fans would like, and that people who've never experienced Bayonetta would get to see and experience in its fullest. But yeah, that's my review of it anyway. Let me know down in the comment section below. Have you seen Bayonetta Bloody Fate? What did you think of it? Do you agree with what I said, or maybe you didn't like it at all? What were some things that didn't set with you? Let me know everything down in the comment section below. So yeah, with that all said, thank you all for watching, and please subscribe. Novus Glorious out.